We all know that the job market in tech is incredibly tough right now. For every opening, there can be hundreds and sometimes thousands of applicants. And for many job seekers, hearing nothing back after sending a resume has unfortunately become the norm. At the same time, AI has become a buzzword also in recruiting. This has left a lot of job seekers wondering, are AI and ATS, short for applicant tracking systems, the reason that they are being rejected? Many people are even turning to paid services to optimize their resumes for ATS. But is that really necessary? Is it even a good idea? We turn to experts in our network for help. And one of those experts is Sam Shulman. She's a seasoned recruiter with a decade of experience. Currently, she's a principal recruiter at Uber, and she was kind enough to sit down with me for a really fascinating conversation. Sam, to start with, can you please tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
My name is Sam Shulman. I have been in recruiting for about 10 years. I spent just over 7 years working in agency recruiting. Most recently, over the last 2.5 years, I have been working in-house as a principal recruiter with Uber. And I focus on recruiting for go-to-market roles for our B2B segment. So over the last couple of years since I started, I've seen a lot of misinformation and misleading information and advice in the world around recruiting and how to get a job. And it's been really important to me to voice my opinion and share my perspective on what it really looks like to be a recruiter and be in that seat and be able to help as many as I can through LinkedIn and other platforms where I'm able to share with a wider audience.
Can you explain to us what ATS is exactly?
An ATS is an applicant tracking system. So it essentially acts as a filing cabinet for candidate resumes, as well as all of the information around their experience with that company.
How do recruiters use ATS in the hiring process?
Recruiters use the ATS at every step of the way. So similar to an individual that might be in sales that uses a CRM to keep note of all of their clients and their conversations and interactions, it's the same thing for a recruiter in an ATS. So this is where managers will open up new requisitions, where we're able to update job descriptions, post them online. That's where we review incoming resumes, where we submit requests for interviews to be scheduled with our talent coordination team. That's where we submit offers. It is integrated with all of our other tools so that our offers team can send out contracts, and ultimately where all of the historical data is stored regarding everything, again, from applicant through offer accept. So within our ATS, I can see different roles people have interviewed for. That's where we keep information such as interview notes. That's where we schedule interviews that are taking place. That's where we are able to open requisitions and post them on the internet so that people are able to apply. So it's essentially, like I mentioned, a filing cabinet for all things applicant as well as interview and job posting related.
We know that the job market is extremely competitive right now. There are more people who are looking for jobs than there are openings. So for each opening, I'm assuming you're getting a really, really large number of applications. How do you approach triaging incoming CVs, incoming resumes at that stage?
There are a lot of different answers to this, even from myself. I don't use the same exact process every single time. It depends on the requisition. It depends on the volume of inbound. There's a difference between, having 70 resumes to go through and having 700 resumes to go through. You go through every single resume one by one. You look at it, you determine if it is strong enough to be put in the next pile that you're going to then whittle down to the people you end up calling. There are some roles that, don't necessarily get 500 applications. And so if I'm looking at a pile of, 100 to 150, I will go through those one by one. You look at it and you decide either they are dispositioned, therefore not moving forward, or I will put them into a different bucket if I'm not sure I want to move forward with them. Are they the strongest or are they qualified? Then there are candidates I come across where I see the resume and I say, they're incredible. This is exactly what I'm looking for. And right then and there, I'll reach out to set up a call with them. At the end of that review, it depends how many I've reached out to. I might have seen 15 fantastic resumes that I reached out to set up a call with. And so I don't necessarily have to then look at my maybe pile. And other times, maybe I only came across 3 or 4. And so I'll then go back through that maybe pile of really qualified candidates and choose the top, 10 and set up a call with them. So that's one way to go about it. In a situation where, maybe it's a role, for example, in operations, we get a lot of inbound applications. It's a little bit more vague. We're open to different types of backgrounds. And so And those, there are often times where I will use keywords to whittle that pile down. So for example, if a manager is requiring a candidate has strong experience in SQL, I will filter simply by SQL. And if the resume doesn't even have SQL mentioned on it, then I will disposition that pile of candidates and only look through those that do. If it's still too large of a pile, then I'll continue with other keywords. So for example, maybe they're looking for somebody that has experience in Salesforce. So that would be a non-negotiable. If it's not on the resume, then I'm going to focus on those that have it on the resume. So a lot of times a manager might say, hey, I know we have a lot of referrals that are coming through. And I've looked at some of the resumes that, internal team members have sent. Can you prioritize? So I'll filter out by source. I'll start with referred candidates. And then once I've gone through those, then I'll move forward and go through the rest of the inbound application.
Can you explain what knockout questions are and how they're used in filtering applications?
Knockout questions are intended to be are objective. They are black and white, yes or no. There is no gray area when it comes to knockout questions. So for example, a knockout question could be, do you have 3 years of experience working with X industry? And if you say yes, great. And if you say no, then the ATS is programmed to automatically reject that candidate. The manager is not open to looking at candidates that do not meet X qualifications. That could also be, are you located in city X or city Y? And if you're not, then we will disposition you. Again, the intention there is to ensure that, again, those black and white qualifications that we're not willing to negotiate on, that a candidate meets those minimum requirements in order for their resume to be reviewed to move forward in the process.
Is AI used to filter out candidates based on their applications?
No. Not in my experience. Knockout questions, again, are black and white, yes or no, A or B. If it's not knockout questions, it's a recruiter that's going through those resumes. There's no AI tool that is reviewing resumes, looking for different experience and able to look at the broader context and decide whether or not a candidate is a fit and making those decisions on whether or not they move forward.
So how do ATS parse information from uploaded CVs?
There are a few different ways that information is parsed. It depends on the format that the resume is submitted in. There is, for example, in the ATS I use now, a section where that information is parsed. And it basically just takes the text and makes it into plain text versus being formatted in a resume. I know a lot of different systems also require candidates to add that information in themselves. Therefore, the resume doesn't necessarily, or the system doesn't have to parse it. It's already been provided by the candidate outside, which I know can be frustrating, but it's to ensure that we have the information. Sometimes candidates submit resumes in weird formats. They submit a photo of their resume, and we're not always able to read those files. And so it's really to ensure that we have that information on file, that we're able to read it effectively.
Do recruiters usually rely on the parsed information that you can then get in the tool in plain text, or do you as a recruiter review the original CV?
I always review the original CV. There's a lot of things at play outside of just the experience, right? We're not looking just for these keywords. I am looking to see different things like the company they worked at, how long they were there for, were they promoted in those roles? So looking at the bigger picture that is illustrated by the CV and seeing how someone put that resume together is very important. So I personally look at the CV itself.
Does it ever happen that an ATS parses information and misses important bit, and a candidate would then not be considered despite having the relevant skills and experience?
Not in my experience. I think if that was a situation, it would have to be that the ATS wasn't able to read the file or the resume that was submitted for some reason, and that the recruiter was using specifically parsed information to review candidate qualifications. There wouldn't be a scenario in which it parsed some information and didn't parse others, or missed specific words on a resume. It's simply looking at, again, the text that's submitted with that file. So again, from my experience, that's not something that that I've ever seen.
How can applicants ensure that ATS don't overlook key information in their CVs?
I think that it's really, to the earlier point, it's really how do we ensure that recruiters aren't overlooking key information in their CVs versus the ATS, and how do they ensure that they're showcasing their skills effectively and submitting a CV or a resume that demonstrates their qualifications for that specific role.
And how do you decide which application to review first?
So I think typically we start with the first resumes received, right? We start at the top of the pile and we work our way through and one by one review those resumes. Again, sometimes the volume of inbound applications is so high, we're not able to review 700 applications, right? I would say we also do prioritize referrals. At my company, we do a lot of work to engage our employee base to reach out to their networks. Good people know good people. So that's really the power of networking that recruiters and professionals in the career space are always talking about. Having a referral, getting your name in on an existing employee's name can help you get your resume reviewed first or be prioritized over others. So again, starting at the top of the pile, working through referrals first. Those are a couple of the ways that we typically look at the inbound applications.
What would be your top 3 tips for candidates to make sure that their application is going to the good pile that is being moved forward in the application process?
One is to tailor the resume to the job description. How does your experience align with the job you're applying for? And what that means for most people is you can't just have one resume that you're submitting to 50 jobs. Having different skeletons of your resume, maybe on one hand, you're an operations manager, on the other, you're a project manager, and really ensuring that the resume you're submitting presents you as a qualified candidate for that role, a strongly qualified candidate. Do you meet the basic qualifications? Do you meet the preferred qualification? So those are things even like job titles. If you are an operations manager and a project manager, you have the ability to change the title, and you should, to align best with the job you're applying for. There are going to be 200 people that are project managers that submit their resume. And so it's not just how good do you look, it's how good are you in the broader scope of all of the other people that have applied. 2, ensuring that your resume demonstrates your impact and your value. Quantitative information is so important to have on a resume. Again, not because a job description isn't good, but there are going to be a number of candidates that will demonstrate how they're going to impact in the role and how they've proven success in a similar role. And those candidates will end up at the top of the pile. And lastly, I think something I post about pretty often is location. If you are located in the same place as a role, fantastic. If you are open to relocation, at the top of your resume, you need to clearly state open to relocation. So I'd say those are 3 really important things that I look at when I'm reviewing resumes.
Can you give me a couple of words on who am I as an applicant designing for, and what should I consider with that in mind?
You're designing for the recruiter and the hiring manager. The content is what it's all about. We don't need colors and designs. And maybe if you're in a field that is, creative, I can appreciate where that might come into play. But for the most part, we want your experience. We want to know where you worked, how long you worked there, what roles you held, and what you accomplished. So make it as simple as possible. Make it easy to read. It does not need to be 1 page. If you've got at least 5 years of experience, it can go on to 2 pages. I'd much rather that than somebody that uses size 8 font and has no space and squeezes it all with 0.2 margins.
Sam, thank you so much for all of that insight. It was really spectacularly interesting listening to you and hearing your thoughts. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Nina. It was a pleasure to connect with you, and I really appreciate the opportunity.